5 reasons why you need to read the trust deed. Number 3 is to check that the trustee can stream. In order to stream, the trust deed must allow the trustee to make a beneficiary specifically entitled to a capital gain or franked dividend, or at least not prohibit the making of such a distribution. Usually, the wording in the deed will be something along the lines of the trustee shall determine the income of the fund in each accounting period and pay, apply, or set aside all or any part of the income of the trust for any of the general beneficiaries living at the time of that determination. So the key words here are pay, apply, or set aside all or any part of that income. Because sometimes income and capital can be quite fluid in trusts, which we went through in our last episode, it is wise to allow the trustee the discretion to pay out the amount from the capital of the trust. The wording in the deed may look something like, the trustee may in its absolute discretion raise any sum and pay that amount out of the capital of the trust fund, in addition to any entitlement to income of any of the general beneficiaries. Alternatively, a streaming power may be potentially implied if the trust deed empowers the trustee to distribute income or capital at their absolute discretion, and there's nothing further in the trust deed or trust law in the relevant jurisdiction that limits that power. The streaming provisions appear to support this implied power, but it has never been tested in the courts. So if the deed is silent on streaming, it is usually recommended to amend the trust deed to specifically include this power. But be careful to check that the insertion of such a clause is within the existing power of amendment under the deed. The tax office also confirms that such an amendment would not trigger CGT issues or cause a resettlement of the trust, but do consider stamp duty and other trust law implications. So it's prudent to seek legal and tax advice prior to amending the deed. So how does streaming actually work? Let's go back to our mum and dad trust example from our previous episode. So mum and dad's trust made $100 in ordinary profits and $300 gross capital gain, which they want to stream the income to dad and the capital gain to mum because mum has capital losses from shares that she sold during the GFC. The deed defines income as taxable income or Section 95 net income, and there is a power to stream. So all good. So trust income is $250, which includes the $100 income plus $150 net capital gain after the 50% CGT discount. And let's assume the trust is eligible for the discount. So the trustee will make a distribution resolution as follows. Mum is specifically entitled to 100% of the gross capital gain, and dad is presently entitled to 100% of the income of the trust excluding capital gains. It is very important that mum is specifically entitled to the gross capital gain and not merely the discounted capital gain. This is because under the streaming rules, the beneficiary must be entitled to all of the financial benefits referable to the capital gain. So if the resolution only specifies the discounted gain to mum, this will only create an entitlement to 50% of the financial benefits that arise from the capital gain. That is, the discount component of the capital gain is not part of the income of the trust, and thus it is not streamed to mum and will end up with dad. And he has no capital losses to absorb the capital gain, and he'll end up paying more tax than if mum got all the capital gains. So, to recap, you need to check the deed to see if the trustee can pay or set aside part of the income for certain beneficiaries. Then you need to see if the trustee can pay that amount out of the capital of the trust if required. And if the trust deed is silent, then you need to check the deed to see if you can amend the deed to include those specific clauses. So it all comes back to reading the deed. I hope you found this tax nugget useful. Check out the whole trust deed series at taxnuggetsacademy.com. Thanks for watching. Next week's video is all about vesting dates. See you then. Bye.